The Winternationals is much more than an NHRA national event. It is a storybook which reveals 5 thrill-packed decades of triumphant, tragic, and tumultuous tales, told a quarter mile at a time by a countless cast of characters who have contributed their own individual achievements and underachievements to the Winternationals' legacy. California's incurable fascination with the automobile in the years following World War II. To properly tell the Winternationals' half-century story, we go back to the opening chapters of hot rodding and drag racing, when both were still in their infancy. It's a story which has been told many times. Hot rodding was a natural outgrowth of the post-World War II optimism and enthusiasm which swept across America. Southern California soon became the stomping ground for a new generation of car-crazy gearheads, building modified hot rods and imaginative race machines, pieced together from boundless creativity and whatever parts they could gather up at local salvage yards. But hot rodding soon took on an outlaw image, with public streets and highways providing the only accessible venue for hot rodders to drag race head-to-head. Local hot rod clubs were sprouting up everywhere, many times nothing more than loosely organized gangs of reckless speed freaks. Street racing might have doomed this new automotive pursuit while still in its formative years, had it not been for the efforts of Wally Parks. His vision was to create an organization which would embrace and unify hot rodding from coast to coast, and perhaps more importantly, provide safe and secure racing venues, which would eliminate the carnage which had already begun to discolor the image of America's hot rodding community. With the National Hot Rod Association establishing an influential foothold thanks to the untiring devotion of Wally, and the Southern California Timing Association promoting safety, sanity, and organized racing events at local paved airstrips and on the dry lakes outside metropolitan Los Angeles, hot rodding was now becoming a legitimate activity. Public sentiment for the hobby was changing for the better. As the 1950s powered up, purpose-built drag racing facilities such as Santa Ana, Irwindale, Bakersfield, and Lyons were setting the stage for a tremendous boom in organized quarter-mile competition. But the most prestigious and influential drag racing venue in Southern California history was soon to become the undisputed mecca for the ever-growing population of drag racers and drag racing fans who had yet to claim a horsepower homeland. In 1952, a young police sergeant and confirmed hot rodder, Bud Coons, and his commanding officer, City of Pomona Police Chief Ralph Parker, who was also a devoted rodder, approached the Pomona Town Fathers about providing young hot rodders with a safe racing facility on which to compete. Coons, who was later to become one of the key figures in the creation of the NHRA's Safety Safari, joined forces with Parker to orchestrate the creation of a drag strip within the confines of the Los Angeles County Fairplex, once the city had given the plan its blessing. The site where the proposed racetrack was to be located was nothing more than a gravel parking lot. But hot rodders, local police, community leaders, and enthusiastic racing fans raised the required funds to pave the lot and ultimately build what would become one of the most famous drag racing venues in history, Pomona Raceway.
The fact that NHRA got behind the track so early to support it, the tracks in California back then were as numerous as In-N-Out burgers are now. But they never all had the flexibility of running at the Fairplex, of getting the support of the community, of getting the police chief to come out there and really get emotionally spiritually behind this racetrack. I mean, the people in Southern California wanted a place for the people to race. They had this great plot of ground out there, this facility, and to get the community behind it early, like I said, to get the sheriff to come out there and the chief of police, and everybody wanted this to succeed, and of course the vision that Wally had to make that the focal point for drag racing in Southern California. So they didn't have the strikes going against them that some of the other tracks did of trying to succeed without all the great support that you needed at that time to have a track be able to run as a viable entity on a regular basis.
We've been producing and co-producing individual events at tracks as they were springing up around the country, but we'd never really tried to do anything on a major scale. So we decided that we had to expand on our past performance and experience and had to put on a major race somewhere. Well, the Los Angeles County Fairground was sitting out there and was being operated by the Pomona Valley Timing Association. So we made a proposal to them that we would like to produce the first West Coast Championships and just see what would happen.
The first organized drag race at Pomona Raceway was the Southern California Championship in April of 1953. The new facility drew a crowd estimated on Sunday to be around 15,000, and the quickest elapsed times of the day were in the 10-second range. But the fact that the NHRA now had a well-managed and centrally located quarter-mile drag strip in the greater Los Angeles area added immense legitimacy to the hot rodding hobby, which was now gradually gaining the outward appearance of a genuine motorsport. As the 1950s came to a close, Pomona and drag racing were becoming synonymous, and some events were so well attended. Grandstands from nearby Pasadena's annual Rose Parade on New Year's Day were trucked to Pomona to accommodate the throngs of NHRA fans. The NHRA itself was going through a growth spurt in the late 1950s and early 1960s. The concept of holding national events attracting the quickest, fastest, and most innovative racers in the country to a single venue for overall bragging rights was about to alter the face of drag racing forever. And in 1961, Pomona Raceway played host to the very first NHRA Winternationals. The NHRA had instituted a ban on nitromethane-fueled race cars in 1957. But gasoline-powered dragsters were easily capable of making wild, smoky, crowd-pleasing passes, and the inaugural Winternationals filled the fairplex. Jack Chrisman, of the infamous Southern California-based Chrisman family, drove the outrageous twin Chevy engined Howard Cam Special to top eliminator honors at the first Winternationals, beating another future legend in the final round, Tom McHugh, some 10 years before earning the nickname Mongoose. And another Hall of Fame racer made his mark at the 1961 Winternationals, Mickey Thompson, who fielded 5 dragsters and a handful of stockers, all Pontiac powered. And no mention of the 1961 Winternationals would be complete without the name Dino Don Nicholson, the stock eliminator champ in his then new 1961 Chevy Bel Air, with a 360 horsepower 409 under the hood. The Winternationals quickly became the second most prestigious event on the NHRA calendar. The U.S. Nationals, born in 1955, was still the must-win race for any drag racer. But there was no denying that the Winternationals had risen to near iconic proportions, thanks to its close proximity to the birthplace of hot rod, drag racing, and the NHRA.
There are 2 reasons why the Winternationals came up to speed so quickly to become on a par with the national race. First of all, just chronologically. It's the second longest running race there. Developed a lot of history. The other thing is the fact that it's in Southern California. And no matter how much the people from the East Coast or Chicago or Arizona, any other places talk about drag racing, when the average person thinks about the birth of the sport, you think of Southern California. And right away, Pomona comes to mind. They were racing there long before they started running the Winternationals. It had already become the place for racers in California to go. And when it was added to the national event scene, it just automatically, there was no doubt that it was going to be a hit. Southern Californians love their drag racing, and you could open up the gates and roll out, tremendous amount of cars in every class. So it was one of the few things that was probably an instant hit and was destined to be from the moment they said it was going to be on the schedule.
The importance and impact of the NHRA's Winternationals were both thrown into high gear in 1963, when the NHRA's fuel ban was finally rescinded, and the quickest and fastest vehicles in drag racing, Top Fuel dragsters, made their much-anticipated debut under the now familiar banner strung across the starting line at Pomona Raceway.
In '63 was the first year that they opened it up to nitromethane. And before that, it was racing a couple of years there. And to be honest, we didn't pay much attention to it because we were nitro guys. And once we discovered nitromethane, we used the gasoline for washing parts. You don't want gasoline. And we raced at Bakersfield. And we won in Bakersfield. The smokers race in '62 was Zucchell, Fuller, and Perdone. Driver, Ken Fuller, chassis, Zucchell did the engines. And we won that race. Then I got the ride in the Gurr Black car in '63, and they opened the Winternationals up to fuel. And that certain date I got married on, and it was like, honey, can we postpone the wedding? And it didn't work that way, so the guys kind of got on me about it, and I got married, so I didn't run '63.
The 1963 Winternationals will be remembered as the event which triggered the top fuel dominance of Big Daddy Don Garlits. The ever-inventive drag racing innovator torched the field that year with his Swamp Rat 5, thanks in large part to its huge aerodynamic wing, which helped Garlits stay hooked up down the entire quarter mile.
Don Garlits from Tampa, Florida, going against Art Malone.
In the final, Big Daddy beat his close friend and frequent collaborator, Art Malone, to score the first of his 35 NHRA national event titles.
The winner in his Dodge-powered Swamp Rat 5, turning a lightning 186.32 in 8.2.
You'd almost have to go back to the Bakersfield race when he first went out there to run in the early 60s and did not have a supercharged car, had an injected car. All the West Coast guys had heard about this big guy from the East coming up, and they sent him out with his tail between his legs. And Garlits vowed, I'm never gonna come west and let that happen again. And so to come back out there, because there really weren't a lot of good top fuel racers from the East. It's like saying, great opera singers from Arkansas, it's a very select group. So he finally comes out there and gets a chance to run with these other drivers. And again, it's one of the things that made the Winternationals so special, because it's the first time that the cars from back east would travel out and get a chance to run against the other top-rated Southern California cars who come in with a chip on their shoulder. Nobody likes somebody coming into their backyard and walking off with a trophy. They certainly don't want somebody coming out from the back east who they think is just a figment of the media's imagination to come out there and be able to run with them and beat them. So for Garlits to come out there and do what he did out there at that race and to be able to whip them on the home ground, they were seething. They just didn't like it.
While the fuel dragsters were regaining tremendous popularity in the early 60s, there was another unmistakable movement sweeping the sport, the result of two cultural phenomena colliding head-on. The youth movement was taking America by storm in the areas of music, entertainment, clothing, and of course the cars that baby boomers were now buying with their newfound status in the economy. Muscle cars were becoming the hottest item Detroit could mass produce, and the factory horsepower wars began to escalate almost on a daily basis. This new performance culture found its way to the drag strip, and General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and for a while AMC found that a victory at an NHRA national event on Sunday translated to eager young buyers heading for their showrooms on Monday. Stock, super stock, and factory experimental classes became the focus of more and more drag racing fans. And the first event of the year in Pomona was the perfect backdrop to flex the factory's muscle cars and reap the benefits at the bottom line. By the mid-1960s, Detroit automakers were throwing everything they had at winning on the quarter mile. Ford had moved from lightweight Galaxies to downsized Fairlanes, nicknamed Thunderbolts, brandishing 427 cubic inch big block engines, with such drivers as Butch Leal, Bill Lawton, and Phil Bonner at the wheel. Chevy was officially out of racing due to a GM corporate ban enacted in 1963. But unofficially, die-hard Chevy campaigners such as Dave Strickler, Dickie Harrell, and legend-in-waiting Bill Grumpy Jenkins gave the bow-tie faithful a presence on race day. Chrysler wasn't taking any prisoners, with 426 Max Wedge and Hemi-powered stockers and super stockers, earning phenomenal success with racers such as Ronnie Sachs, Roger Lindemuth, and Tommy Grove taking trophy after trophy.
Tom Grove's Plymouth beats Arnie Beswick to the end of the quarter mile.
But at the 1966 Winternationals, the menfolk could only stand by and watch as the Dragon Lady, Shirley Shahan, became the NHRA's first female national event winner in her super stock automatic 1965 Plymouth, tuned by her husband, H.L. Shahan. Shirley beat Ken Heineman in the final with her 11:26 elapsed time at over 126 miles per hour. Years before the other Shirley Muldowney, would once and for all open the doors for women in what had been a male-dominated sport.
The 60s races at the Winternationals were instantly identifiable with the era of the muscle cars when they came out. Ran the Winternationals back in the early 60s. In the mid-60s, the factories got behind them, and all of a sudden you have all the teams coming out. Of course, Shirley Shahan had the big race there and put her name on the map. Jack Chrisman came out, had the factory support with the Saxon Sons Comet that came out, that all of a sudden became an instant hit with the fans. It was a unique automobile. It was getting support from the factory. I mean, it was an actual licensed, registered car from the factory. And whether you think you can identify with a car that's running those kind of speeds with your 65 Comet that you have at home is up for argument. But I think the fact that they were able to create in an era, in a geographic area where the dragsters were the hit of every drag race to get the factory experimental, the altered wheelbase, the support of the factory cars to come out there. And even as late as just the late 60s when they morphed into the great funny car race that they had there in 1969 was just another reason why that track and that facility became such a hit.
As the decade of the 60s continued to see the horsepower wars intensify, automobile manufacturers were becoming more bold, more aggressive, and more determined to win. The most graphic example of this upwardly spiraling factory firefight emerged in 1965, when Chrysler took liberal advantage of the NHRA rulebook and built outrageous altered wheelbase intermediate Dodges and Plymouths. The result was cars that looked funny, and the term funny car became a permanent